Today I want to talk about why they had decided to cut your permanent fund dividend in half. By now every Alaskan knows that they would have had a permanent fund dividend of over $2,000. Now they're going to get one for $1,000. And part of the reason for doing that is so the legislature can pay the oil companies to take your oil. The amount of money that is not being distributed to Alaskans is being distributed to the oil companies to pay them effectively for taking our oil that they should be paying us for. It's the same batch of scoundrels that have been trying to take your dividend for 30 years. I was the chairperson of the committee that set up the management structure for the permanent fund that ensured it would be a growth fund, and that's the fact that it was a growth fund is the reason it's able to pay dividends. And Jay Hammond was a friend of mine. He was very much in support of the dividend program and believed that it was there to make sure that Alaskans remembered where the oil came from and remembered that it's their oil and that they're entitled to a share of the proceeds. But back when I was in the legislature, we not only set up the dividend program, when we were setting up the permanent fund management structure, we had bankers there that wanted us to let them play with it just like Wall Street played with everybody's money, and we had this big crash in 2008. They effectively wanted to do the same thing. We had Chamber of Commerce people there who wanted to spend it on docks, roads, and harbors. We had people from Commonwealth North wanting to spend it on docks, roads, and harbors. If we had gone their direction, the same thing that happened to Alberta's permanent fund would have happened to ours. We would have lost it all, as they did. But we made it a growth fund, and over the years it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and you got bigger and bigger dividends. And if you'll remember, a few years back, everybody got about $3,000, a little more than, because former Governor Sarah Palin kicked in an extra billion. And the reason we had an extra billion was because for a short period of time we were getting some semblance of what other countries around the world get for the same product, our oil. And up to that point in time, we had effectively been giving our oil away. And the reason we'd been giving our oil away was revealed when VICO was caught bribing your legislators to give tax breaks to oil companies that they didn't deserve. Effectively, we didn't get what we should have gotten for Prudhoe Bay. Had we gotten what we should have gotten for Prudhoe Bay, and had we put the additional funds into the permanent fund, in other words, if we'd spent the same amount of money but simply got what we should have gotten for Prudhoe Bay and saved the additional money in the permanent fund, the permanent fund would be about 5 times bigger than it is today, and so would your dividend. We would now be at a point where, as the oil runs dry from Prudhoe Bay, we would have enough money streaming in from the permanent fund that we could live on the earnings of it for perpetuity. But that didn't happen, and the reason it didn't happen was because VICO and other companies were bribing your legislators to give away your oil for over 30 years. VICO got busted, 6 legislators went to jail, and it took 6 years for the oil companies to regain control of your legislature. And once again, we have the lowest oil tax in the world compared to any other major oil producer in the world. And the oil companies spent $16 million fighting us when we tried to overturn that proposal. And I was the guy that started a referendum to reverse what you might know as, if you remember, it was Senate Bill 21. And it was the bill that reversed the legislation that happened in 2006, right after VICO got busted and Bill Allen got busted, the 6 legislators got busted. We passed a fair tax. And from that tax, we not only had a substantial increase in spending, we put away $16 billion. That's the money you hear about that we're spending down now. It's the savings we got during that 6-year period when we were getting a fair share. And when I say a fair share, we actually should have been getting a lot more yet than we were getting, but we were getting a lot more than we had before, and a lot more than we are now. But Prudhoe Bay is still very profitable, and it's been demonstrated by just the marketplace to be the cheapest production in North America. So once again, you are getting taken to the cleaners, and if we were getting our fair share for oil, if the legislature were taxing them at the rate they should be, you would have to have a dividend cut. There'd be plenty of money to run the state, and your dividend would have been over $2,000 this year. So that's the reason your dividend has been cut. There is still enough wealth left on the North Slope to make this state and you and everybody in it rich. Unfortunately, the wealth that's up there is going to 3 companies: Exxon, Conoco, and BP. When you produce oil in the kind of volume that Prudhoe Bay produces, the cheapest way of shipping oil is tanker and pipeline. And all of our oil goes via tanker and pipeline. And it's way less expensive to produce oil that's onshore than offshore. Than just, in Prudhoe Bay, they poke a hole in the ground and the oil squirts out. In fracking, you've got to go down there and you've got to force the oil out. In the deep waters, you have to build platforms and all kinds of stuff. So BP, Conoco, and Exxon have been telling you that it's expensive to do business up there, but that is just simply not true. What does Exxon, Conoco, or BP sell in the state of Alaska besides bullshit? Except they sell you on, you should give them your oil for free. When the controversy was going on over Senate Bill 21, where they once again gave themselves a great big oil tax, you had 2 employees of ConocoPhillips who voted to give their employer a tax break, $1 billion tax break, $2 billion tax break. That would get you more than the Employee of the Year award. In most places, that would get you employment and pension for life. Now, if I had my way, that would be a crime. It would get you life behind bars. They were making $32 per barrel net profit take home after taxes from our oil. That's what they were taking home after they paid their Alaska taxes. They took home a net profit of $32 a barrel. At that same time, they were signing a contract in Iraq to produce Iraq's oil for $2 a barrel plus cost. But they were signing contracts at the same time halfway around the world, where they're getting shot at, by the way, to produce oil for $2 a barrel net profit plus cost. They were producing several million barrels a day in Iraq and getting paid a fraction of what they were getting paid here for producing 500,000 barrels a day. And by the way, Kuwait is the second largest stockholder in British Petroleum. They have a vested interest in keeping other people's oil off the market. So before you buy into the arguments that oil companies need to be treated with kindness, they're not our friends. They are people who want to do business with us, and they will do business with us as long as they can make a profit. And I'll close with one thing. My grandfather had a cow, and he loved that cow. And I love oil companies for exactly the same reason my grandfather loved his cow. My grandfather's cow gave him milk every single day. And that cow gave him milk every single day for several years. And then one day that cow quit giving him milk. And my grandfather still loved that cow, but he ate it.